Next, Assistant Secretary O'Connell, when we last met at this committee, I asked you for a commitment that a significant portion of the $10 billion for the Defense Production Act funding that I helped secure as part of the American Rescue Plan be invested in the raw materials needed to make N95 masks here in America. The alarming spread of Omicron has made the need for N95s even more clear. And yet, ASPR has not spent any of this American Rescue Plan funding on the raw material needed to make N95s in America. While it has invested $3.1 billion on other priorities, primarily using prior supplemental funding. The FDA reports now that 60% of the KN95 masks that are being imported from China are fake.
Not only was it 3 scientists from Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford that you chose to malign, 50,000 scientists and medical doctors signed this petition. And what they wanted was something that most Americans think is pretty reasonable. It's a different kind of approach. Instead of saying that everyone is the same and everyone should get the same treatment and everybody ought to just get vaccinated, what it did is it said that the death rate for this disease is extraordinary in the risk being different according to ages. So if you look at an 80-year-old, it's at least 1,000 times greater death rate than it is for a 10-year-old. So wouldn't we want to say that, well, we're going to assess the risks of each individual and have the treatment according to that, or would we just simply say everyone should be vaccinated? The death rate for kids under 18 is about 1 in a million, a little bit less than the chance of being struck by lightning. We don't yet know fully whether or not kids who have already had COVID might be at risk for some of the side effects of the vaccine. Still needs to be explored. But for a kid under 18 who's already had COVID, see, it's death rate of about 1 in a million, even if you haven't had a disease, even if you haven't had COVID, it's about 1 in a million. It's extraordinarily uncommon for a child to die. If you've already had the disease, it's probably a great deal less than that. Many Americans wonder why you steadfastly refused and worked with others to try to hide any kind of knowledge of natural immunity and how it would affect our decision making. So for example, you have a 10-year-old kid and his mom comes up and all of a sudden he gets myocarditis from the vaccine and dies. Admittedly a rare complication, but what are you going to tell her when she says, well, he had COVID 3 months ago? I mean, why would you force me to vaccinate my kid? Why would you force me to vaccinate my kid without even checking to see whether he's already immune?
A question that I'm going to forward to you from a teacher is if the teacher is fully vaccinated, boosted, tests positive for COVID, but after they test positive, they feel pretty fine. There's no fever, there is no nothing. After 5 days, can that teacher return to school without testing negative, just so long as that individual wears a mask?
Yes. Thank you.
The point is, we have been lied to. We have been actively misled. We have been led around like mules on a tether by government bureaucrats like Fauci, who want to shut down your job while he makes north of $400,000 a year, and we learned this week is set to retire with a pension of over $350,000 a year. These people want to muzzle your kid all day at school while they parade around maskless at dinners and the Met Gala and so on. They want to scare parents into sticking an experimental vaccine into their kids' arms over and over and over. Not 1, but 2 shots, and then a mandatory 3rd, or no sports, or school, or indoor fun of any kind. Despite the data that unvaccinated young people face a risk far less severe than that of fully vaccinated adults. By the way, the Justice Department just admitted in a filing in support of its vaccine mandate that people between the ages of 18 and 30 have about the same risk of from COVID as those who are 50 plus who are fully vaccinated. So the unvaccinated 30-year-old has about the same risk as the fully vaccinated 50-year-old, and yet we're firing people. We're firing 18 to 30-year-olds for not getting the vaccine. They had to admit it in court. You see, just like Trump and his election story, when they get into court, they start to tell the truth. And the Biden administration is telling the truth about the real risk young people face. And it's minuscule and does not justify vaccine mandates or any of this nonsense. And their lies are starting to be exposed. So while we continue to see outrages, I mean, not everyone's listening to reason. They're just starting to. We continue to see outrages like schools closing right now, despite the harm we know this causes the children. Thanks a lot, unions. Or letters like the one from our own boys' school proclaiming that, oh, of course, that's a quote, of course the boys will remain masked for the foreseeable future. Or the notice in my friend's New York City building mandating that all contractors, delivery personnel, and employees servicing residents in the building must now be fully vaccinated. Okay, so now your cleaning lady, your plumber, your pizza delivery guy, they got to get vaxxed to do their jobs. Despite all of that, the house of cards is coming down. The realities of COVID are becoming undeniable.